Um, One of the more famous one is probably, if any one of you have been to Google campus, you know of their food culture, right? And they have a really nice cafe restaurants everywhere. I didn't know that before I joined, but for the last 20 years, campus and Google have been the has been the one behind it, right? So we're the ones who run and operate the cafes. Now, Digital Labs is the digital arm of the company where we take care of web ordering channels or mobile ordering channels. We also create a lot of enterprise products that like data products that help us to streamline our operations, as well as maybe things that sometimes you might see in public facing restaurants like McDonald's. If you peek in the back, you might see some terminals and back of house digital products, kiosk and all these things. So yeah, we actually connect all these things as a system of digital touch points that operates and runs the business.
Mm.
Yeah,
So, so you were in Compass Digital Labs for how many years now? How long?
I just crossed my first year.
First year. Okay, yeah. And
Yeah,
this when you came back from Hong Kong, right? Like when you came moved to Canada.
exactly.
I see.
Yeah,
I see.
yeah.
So, and then previously you worked at IDEO, like Continuum and Accenture. Can you share a little bit about the, what's it like in consultancies?
Oh man, it's such a good experience. So in consultancies, you get exposure. Of course, I think most people know that. Like you actually do get to meet a lot of different companies. But I think the biggest takeaway is when you are in a consultancy, you actually learn what I often tell people like it's sometimes you have to know what you want, but sometimes you also have to know what you don't want, right? So sometimes you do work on certain things and you realize, I might gravitate towards this certain industry. And you also might have worked on projects where you say, yep, I've been there, done that, and I kind of fall in love with that certain industry. Maybe I should pursue a career in-house in that industry as well. So it is a very good stepping stone and a way to explore. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest takeaway for me as well. Yeah,
Okay. Oh, let's rewind because I know you actually have an
yeah,
industrial design background, right?
yes.
Okay, why don't you maybe share a little bit about that? Because I know many people are switching industries, and
Hmm.
everybody thinks they need a like UX degree, but actually it's like far and few in between.
Yeah.
Many people switch. So how did you make that transition? Or yeah.
um, that transition, I think pretty smooth to be honest. Like if you peel back the onion of design skills and design thinking, it actually did origin from engineering and product design, right? The craft of prototyping. Now we do it digitally, but when we did industrial design, it's really about building full mock-ups and cheap wireframe. Sorry, I'm using wireframe, but you know what I mean, like uh, pretty low-fi prototypes and use it to test in the market as well. So that actually it's just the medium is different, but the concept and the process and everything is like one for one almost. Yeah.
So what are the key skills you think are needed for UX designers?
Many. I think empathy is definitely the first one. Like empathy is really about, and that's one thing that I think I always mention to some of my colleagues is that designers are not users. I have to be blunt there. Like designers are really sometimes not the users, and I think that we all really, it's easy to say human centered, let's do research, let's try to go out and understand and see the user, but really being them, it's completely different, right? You don't know their economic backgrounds, you don't know what kind of home experience, family experience, even the language, how you say, a barrier might be something that we don't fully understand. So that is something that we have to, as UX designers, we have to really understand that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think it's more than often said, never fall in love with your own work.
Mm.
But as soon as your user actually can use it, that is when you know you succeed, right? You might not love it as much as it is, but you should be proud that the user actually loves it, right? So that is success from a UX. What we need as a basic fundamental skills. Yep.
Okay, so empathy and don't fall in love with your work.
Yeah,
Right. Oh, maybe
you can, but don't fall in love too much with your work. Be proud of it.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm sure a lot of people are curious, like, what is it like working in IDEO, Shanghai, and Continuum, Italy? Can you share a little bit about that? Like, maybe that was a while ago, but
yeah.
still, like, what was it like?
So they're in one ways, you know, same, similar, but not the same, different flavors. Um, so I think the one that is more well known here is IDEO, right? As I hope maybe most of the folks here might have heard of the company. Um, it is incredible. I think it was the best thing about IDEO is that it was such a sought after company that the journey to even get in was an experience itself. You have to be at on your toes to be super creative and find ways to actually impress them enough that they will even entertain an interview, right? And once you get there, I think um, like once you get in, it's like, oh my gosh, I just achieved my life dream goal of joining such a company. And once you're in there, it's really like they have a very strong culture. The culture is so strong that no matter which office you are in, you speak in the same way, you behave in the same way, and when you do things in a certain way, I think I could almost say mostly maybe idealists know how it feels like, and you know what they're trying to say without doing something. In fact, I'm just we have regularly sometimes a alumni call, um, and we realize that this what we've learned from alumni as IDEO actually carries out into the world of what we do elsewhere. So, and I've been reflecting on this quite a lot. Why I joined and why IDEO exists and why they are never huge is they are never big. They don't want to be, to have 50 offices all around the world. It is by intent, because what I've learned at IDEO is that they have clearly stated they have a role in the world, which is to, and I call it like in my personal way to describe, like they are the flag bearer or the torch bearer of really pushing the edge of what design should be for the world, solving tough problems or really systemic problems, and that's what they stand for, and they cannot be uh, chasing financial rewards for that. They do need to be profitable, but that's my learning in there is that they have took on this role for the world. They have shown a lot of us methods and ways to do things, and they're happy doing that. So I have my utmost respect for IDEO for keeping themselves at the size as they are, and teaching the rest of us in the world designers like what could good design look like. So that's
Mhm.
my biggest takeaway from IDEO.
Yeah, I know IDEO, like early days, it was more industrial design focused, but now
Yeah.
it's like service, right? It's not like maybe less proportion in really physical products. What's
Yeah,
your
yeah.
understanding?
In fact, these days they are about Sandy, who is the current CEO. She pioneered quite a few things, and one of the things that she really showed the rest of us there is the concept of systemic design, right?
Mhm.
Where you design systems. It's way beyond business model and ecosystems. It's like you tackle at everything, not everything, like as many things as you can to make sure that they're all working as a system. So this is what they're pursuing right now, and it's huge. It's really incredible. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, actually, Derek, maybe you might not even know. I actually have interviewed with IDEO. I did the
Yeah, I
offer,
remember. Actually, no, you told me.
but I know that they have
Mm,
actually, if you go in, you have two heads. One is the design head, like interaction design head,
mhm,
and another is actually a team head, which is it could be an engineer.
mm.
So the structure is more like how to say it's not
Matrix.
report to one person, report to two people. Like, can you explain a little bit about that if you can?
Yeah, I didn't experience that model when I was there. In fact, every few years they change the way of things like uh, IDEO tries not to be hierarchical. I mean, we should all face one thing. There are definitely hierarchies in any company. No matter what company tells you, like we are a flat organization, there are going to be seniorities in there. So soft hierarchy, if you put it. What they're really good at is matching people with skill sets and similar values that you could one be your career counselor, the other one could be your mentor, and it's two completely different things, right? But you can be working for a portfolio lead that is working in an area that you might be interested in, and that's who you work with most often. And that person has no, it's not your career counselor nor your mentor, right? So it's pretty fluid in that sense.
Mm.
So yeah,
So what about like who was in charge of evaluating or everybody's evaluating everyone kind of
absolutely,
years?
absolutely. Everybody's probably heard about 360-degree review, and yeah, we practice that not only in IDEO, but I think almost every company that I join, whether it's in-house or consultancies, that is definitely a norm today.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So how about so when you were at IDEO, what role were you working? Were you already in user experience interaction or more industrial design role?
Interesting. I started as industrial design and slowly got more and more into just doing things that are outside of industrial design. Like that's the best thing about, what I mentioned around systemic design. It was already brewing for a long time. You would
Mhm.
touch digital, you would touch a physical space, you would touch like a role of a person, and you touch the service. And sometimes you do have to design the physical product. I remember some projects you actually even have to design the cook and try cooking it yourself as well, right? So it's really, really awesome. It was such a great experience.
And
Yeah.
I know they're very collaborative, right?
Hmm.
Because I
Hmm.
think even now a lot of UX designers they might be working in a company where they're like asked tasked to just do the design, but it's not like really collaborative. You know what I mean? Like, can you describe how it was?
Sorry. So if I understood the question correctly, it's like how is it to collaborate? Why is a collaborative environment? Is that correct, Elaine?
Yeah, like for example, we know a lot of designs. They might just be one UX designer amongst like a lot of engineers and business and marketing people,
Got
and
it.
the design process is actually not in place in the
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Explain
Um,
how you guys worked back then.
in fact, I think so as far as I remember, the very first project that I had there, there were always every project has a mix of people from, um, I think we have to credit to the point that right from the get-go, when you start a conversation with because it was in the consultancy side, when you start a conversation with a client on a potential opportunity to work together, you don't just go there with an industrial design perspective. You go there with uh, I would say, as wide as a perspective as possible to have the conversation. So next to me might be a business designer. The other one next to me could be a spatial designer, and then one of them could be a interaction designer, and I'm an industrial designer. And so we listen to the same client problems in different ways, and we come back to the client with a potential proposal of one way that combines all the skills together. So that's what it means to have a holistic design, rather than I'm just gonna do this part for you and the rest you're gonna figure out yourself, right? So that
Right.
starts from there. And then as you whatever you we propose to the client and it gets signed off, that's how we're going to deliver as well as a team, from different skill sets.
And you did this in Shanghai, right? Like
Hmm.
what was that?
Sorry.
Which year was that?
2010 to almost the end of 2015, so almost 6 years. Yeah.
Okay. And how was it working in China? Do you want to share that?
Oh man, sorry. This was, I think I'm very lucky. I was there at the right time. I think during that period, China was booming. In fact, to a point that I, I I I I don't mean to say this in a bad way, but when I moved to Hong Kong from Shanghai, I realized actually, the speed of digital, it's kind of behind China a lot. And I would almost get to the point like, I don't even know if I should say this, but quite a lot of other parts of the world are quite behind China in that sense, from a digital and technology perspective. So I did had the chance to visit Alibaba and made friends there. We just saw the speed of digital transformation, not at companies, but as a country, for people to immediately go to WeChat and do everything without taking your wallet, and it was just amazing, right? I mean, I even have to say that even IDEO was learning from China, and we went to the point that we often send signals from Shanghai back to the rest of the other 9 offices around the world and say, this is what we're seeing in China. How would you consider that in context to your own geographies, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
So why did you leave Shanghai then?
I wanted to move to Hong Kong. It was Fjord.
Yeah.
Was an opportunity to help them to join one of my other former boss who started the office there, and I love speaking Cantonese. So
Okay. So why
yeah.
don't you share like how was it in Accenture Fjord for you?
Oh, I definitely share a down and up story. This is so the bigger picture of this is that when we started work in consultancy, at least try not to reveal too much of my age, but uh, most consultancies were independent, right?
Mm.
You are Frog, you are IDEO, you are Continuum, you are. But look at these days. Frog belonged to a company called Evercent. Continuum belongs to EPAM, which is also a software company. And IDEO sold to Q, and Fjord was one of the first pioneers as a consultancy to be acquired by Accenture. And I think it was a really smart move, right? On either side, to be fair. These days, it is really, really hard for consultancies to be independent by themselves, right? And actually it got triggered when I was at IDEO and I started talking to other companies like BCG, and I was thinking of an opportunity in BCG, and I started. I When I was at IDEO, I was very proud, and we've been kind of like schooled into like we are the best, and in some ways at IDEO we are one of the best in the in that industry. And one of the things that I realized is that, hey, why am I always having pride working against them when I can work with them? So that question start, fermenting in my mind, and kind of like, I need to think about this a little bit more. And when Fjord, the recruiter, reached out, I was like, nah, I'm good. I'm an ideal. I'm happy. But then I start thinking, hey, you know what? Maybe it's not a bad thing, because there's Accenture, there's management consulting. I have no clue about management consulting except how to criticize them. So I I have to share that journey of being a designer that went through the journey. I went in there, went to Fjord, and every day almost every day I have to communicate with my Accenture colleagues at that point. And I realized one thing, that um, everything that I've learned as a designer, I might have to unlearn, because I was speaking a language that the business world or the technology world or the management consulting world know very little of. And so I was speaking a foreign language. And so after about a few months, I I made we as designers, the first thing we have to do is to be empathetic, right? As we mentioned. So I really made this, me and my colleagues, we said, hey, you know what? We have to switch. We have to pick up a second language. So we kind of coined it ASL, which means Accenture as a second language. What it means, yeah, what it means is to really understand who they are, how they speak, what their language, and so we can speak their language and kind of like package design in a way that they understand it. And that went a really long way. And I really have to say that that was one of the best pivots I've ever made in my career, to really now see beyond what design is, and how design and technology and digital and management consulting can all work together. And that's why Fjord is really successful today, because they've also, as a company, learned how to work in those worlds, right?
Can you give us an example of how would you translate a design sentence to a business sentence, just so that people know what you're talking about, right?
So classic thing. I think, for example, as a service designer, sometimes you might say journey map this and journey map that. In the end, you could actually make it in a very layman term to say how, okay, I think when we go through these steps, right, here's how, our technology and our consumer would actually be being able to complete that task. So we dropped a lot of our own design jargon and used things that are more layman or their language. I shouldn't say they, I say we, right? Our language as Accenture as a whole to have a common understanding, right? So it became a lot more easier once we started talking that way. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you know,
Mhm.
sorry,
Sorry.
you know the funny thing is the less we use those design vocabulary, the more they spoke the design vocabulary. So
That's great.
um, I sorry, can I just share one more thing which is incredible? So um, you know, I really have to thank the two companies that I worked in. IDEO was trying to change the world, right? Like design thinking, and most of the world picked up. And the one clear evidence that I saw have changed was actually how Fjord brought design thinking into Accenture. Accenture is a 500,000 uh, employees worldwide. And when you hear 500,000 people start talking about using the design language and bringing you into the meetings, you know you've succeeded as a company, as Fjord, that you've managed to convert you know, a really big company to apply design into their the ways of working. Yeah.
Right. I also know that actually the way Accenture works is it's like Accenture as a management consulting, they deal with like the CEO level people, right?
Hmm.
And then here it is more the strategic, arm. And then there's Accenture Interactive, which is more, is that more execution? Is that like how does
No,
how does that work?
Accenture Interactive is the parent group that made that had the foresight to actually acquire Fjord. And their mandate is very, very clear. It's just really one word: experience.
Mm,
So from long time ago, they really understood to own it's the experience economy. To own the experience economy, you need to have aspects of everywhere. If you're just working on technology and implementing all those tools and everything, you're only playing in the quote unquote in the back end, right? So you need to own the front end so that the back end actually complements. So that's why they thought acquiring a design company is the solution that the two works in tandem. Um, so in fact, more and more the line between Fjord and Accenture is blurred for good reasons. And I think they're way, way, way far ahead than any other management consulting that has acquired design companies.
right.
Yeah,
And how does is there any cultural clash? Because back in the late 90s, there was also like
yeah,
this merging, frenzy between tech and design.
yeah,
But recently is this like management consultancies like eating up the design
yeah,
entities. How
yeah.
how was the culture?
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned, I mentioned about the Accenture as a second language, right? It was just one of those symptoms of not being able to, as a whole, speak the language that they speak. So in the beginning, it was a bit tough, but I think within 2 or 3 years, and that's why I really credit Fjord for doing that. Like within 2 or 3 years, they were able to convert the rest of Accenture to be very pro design thinking.
Mm,
So um, the frictions are always going to be there in the beginning, and some bits might remain, but everybody has made the effort to really try to understand each other and adopt each other's methods. That it went to a point where it's like actually there is no problem. In fact, I've went to one of the reasons why I stayed there for a while and was super happy coming to Canada is in fact, the Canadian Accenture really wants Fjord to be everywhere in their work, right? So they've come to a point where Fjord doesn't need to advocate or educate or do any of those things. They now the rest of Accenture they can't get enough of Fjord. Let's put it this way. They can't
mm,
get enough of design.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, some people are asking,
Mhm.
like, so why did you leave IDEO and move to Hong Kong?
Yeah, so same as I mentioned, IDEO was IDEO. IDEO was not acquired by anyone at the time. The parent company was Steelcase. So You had design, your world is design, your parent company is a furniture company, right? Office furniture company. So the reason why I left was I did mention that why I did ask myself the question, why am I always fighting against management consulting? Why can't I work with them? And so when Accenture gave me the opportunity with Fjord, I was like, oh, finally I can go and work with management consulting and see how it's like, right? So yeah,
I see. So it's like a shift in
it
yeah,
is. It is.
career.
Yeah.
How about like any difference working with Western companies and Eastern Shanghai, Hong Kong? Like what's your experience like?
Okay, this is very interesting. My takeaway, and I've learned this at also at working in Shanghai, was that I realized when working with companies that had, let's just say, the big global 500 in whether they are a Pepsi or a Coca-Cola or those big companies, right? The ways that they make decisions and everything, it has multi-layer, and it's pretty safe because it's decades and decades of management models that are being implemented, and they have processes that they follow in a certain manner. And the decision makers are usually at a director or a VP level in those big companies. And you probably will impact that amount of change in the company. And one thing we realized when working in Shanghai and for Chinese clients is that Chinese companies were really, really hungry. And a lot of the decisions are taken by the entrepreneurs and founders of the company. So guess what? The bets and the bets in innovation and design was much more bolder. Were they more sophisticated? Maybe not. Were they bolder? Absolutely. So they always will go for things that they have courage to actually do things that a lot of companies that have processes will not dare to do. And so we got the best innovation out of working with Chinese clients because they were really very courageous in that sense.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Um, were there any hierarchies like working with the Chinese companies?
Absolutely, they are very hierarchical among themselves. But guess what? Working with the founders of companies and entrepreneurs, we actually go directly to them, and they've asked us to start new businesses for them and to create new ventures and all these things. So it's like, here you go do it for me. I just want to try and see if I can succeed in this. Hunger was one of the things that my 6 years experiencing living in China was one of the keywords that I learned from them. Hunger
Mm,
and ambition. You put the two together, that's why we are seeing China is so, how
right.
would you say, prosperous right now, right? Yeah.
So, okay, so there's one question from the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Between IDEO and Accenture, what are the differences in team structure? Do
IDEO and
team
Accenture.
team structure
Um,
and Accenture, like Accenture PR, right? Like, do teams
yeah,
go around
very
problems
different.
often get assigned to each team?
Yeah, I don't think we can compare IDEO and Accenture, but if you compare IDEO and Fjord, maybe. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Accenture, maybe I'll do a just to help expand this question, right? When you say team, it's also, I would assume we're talking about UX team, but I would also expand it to the point where it's not just about the UX team, it's also about the the bigger picture behind it, right? So I just, let's just say, I think about 600 people, if not, when I left, it was about 600 people. I don't know how many they have right now. You get to, you have only actually get to work on many different types of industries. There are a select few groups that specialize in something. So for example, our current CEO, Sandy, she actually started the D4L group, which is Design for Learning. So her group is like, I remember I was just hoteling at the San Francisco office, and Sandy was just behind, and just look behind, like her desk is like 6 people, and they all are the Design for Learning group. But then they draw the other part of the rest of the group there to work on education projects, right? And as I mentioned earlier on, like they never go in and just saying we are designing for learners. We only have our own people. They draw people who design space to design the school. They draw people who are interaction designers to draw what e-learning is, right? So you actually draw people in and you get to work on education. So the team is formed by expertise, right? Whereas in a big company like Accenture, which is the other extreme, you have people who are working in financial services for the last 25 years, and that's all they did, right? And then you have somebody else who's working on, let's just say, robotics for the last 20 years, and that's all they did, right?
So
So
silos, right? Like,
yeah, because they are structured in a way that they are experts of that particular industry. You ask them a very, very detailed technical question about what does it mean for, something in the financial industry, they can tell you everything, right? Whereas as a designer in IDEO, you actually need to spend time learning about that to a certain level if you haven't spent enough time in it. Yeah.
so is that like what the difference between corporate and consultancy? Like,
Slightly as well. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, in some ways, Accenture, you can say, they do have people who can be very comfortable in a corporate environment because they know so deep that knowledge and that field.
mm,
Um, yeah. So what I didn't touch on is like as Fjord, you benefit from that because your parent company and your immediate colleagues, when you pair up with them, they have the knowledge that you can tap on immediately, right? So you don't have to find out a lot of things by yourself. Yeah.
mm. So what would you say are the pros and cons of working in a in-house corporate environment versus a consultancy or agency?
Yeah. I honestly, it's all very subjective. I can talk a lot about the pros and pros. The way I would split it is this. The lines are getting more gray between the two. In fact, you can parse it into four. Sometimes you have the consulting who just consulting work, but also you get consulting that actually becomes seconded into an in-house environment. Case
Mm,
in point, BCG Digital Ventures. They actually become the second arm of their clients to go build companies or new ventures, and they build the teams and they're fully focused, almost acting like a in-house role, right?
mm.
So I was in one of those roles when I first to Canada. I spent more than a year and 4 months on the client side. I wasn't doing consulting work for anybody else. It was just for the clients, right? Um, then you have in-house corporate, right? You have corporate that does the corporate thing, corporate UX and corporate design, but you also have some corporate internal consultancies that advises the rest of the group. So if you look at this, like sometimes there are actually four different characteristics that you may find yourself in, and all of them have different benefits as well. Yeah.
Mhm. What would you say other benefits?
Benefits. The first one, consulting, is the diversity, right? That you can actually get to
Mhm.
experience different type of clients, different industries, and everything. Now, if you're a consultant seconded to in-house, you actually have the benefits of being able to go back to the diversity, but then you can spend a year trying out an industry or more than a year to see if you like it. And sometimes, like BCG, that's the one that I mentioned, uh, you may do so well that the company, BCG Digital Ventures or the client might say, you know what, why don't you just come over and become in-house?
Mm.
And DV, which we call short form for BCU Digital Ventures, is okay with that. They actually want to do that, right? Um, internal consulting in-house.
Non-compete
Sorry, go
rules?
ahead.
Other
Sorry.
non-compete issues like non-solicitation issues?
No, the business model is done in that way that they're happy to graduate their consultants to become general managers or product owners or product managers and leaders of the company. Yeah,
Mm.
they're happy doing that.
Okay.
Um, so now the other two models are the benefits. As a in-house consulting, you get to actually work on diverse projects as well. If your parent company is in many different type of businesses, you get exposure as well,
Mm.
and you get to see it through because you are still in the company. You're not limited by a client budget or something. You are in the company, so you can always stay connected to the product or that service that you
Mm.
consulted your rest of your colleagues in the company.
Mhm.
And the best thing about being in-house is whether you are a designer or a business designer or whatever role you're in-house. And this is why I joined in-house, is that I've learned over the years that I've learned what I like, and I realized the most fun thing is you get to operate and grow the product after it's launched, right?
Mm.
And that is true accountability, and you can shape and grow, and you really learn what does it mean to really operate the product. It's hard, it's not easy, but that's very, very rewarding when you see millions of people using your product, and you can actually do a simple UX tweak that people behave differently, right? So that is the most rewarding thing about being in-house.
Mm. Do you miss variety?
I actually get variety as well because in the current company we're in healthcare. We have education. We also have what we call business and industry, which is like manufacturing to corporate towels and Google's and Amazon's. These are our clients as well. So there is enough variety to go around. In
Oh,
fact, I don't have enough people to do all the work that's required of us.
I
Yeah.
see. Okay. So
Yeah.
so actually at Compass Digital Labs, you service all the business units. Is that how it works?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Because different design groups in different corporates also work differently. Some they take care of all the business units, but some are inside each business unit, right?
Yep. Yep. And we are more currently at the centralized model, but it might not be the case further down, right? As we grow, as we scale, I also start thinking like, how is the organization of my UX team? Do I have heads of each what we call sector or industry? That's something I need to think about and reorganize my team when the time comes, right? Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So well, there's one more that I haven't asked you is
Hmm.
working in Italy in Continuum. Like that must be so different too, right? Like you siesta, nap in the afternoon or something.
Yeah.
How was that? When was that?
That was early 2000s. Sorry, was the question how was it or when was how was that, right?
When it's 2000, but how was it working in Italy in
It
Continuum?
was, oh my, oh man, where do I start? I have to say this. Some of my best friends
Mhm.
are still from Milan because all of us were poor poor and hungry designers going there to really try to strike it out and see like what Milan is the design capital of fashion and everything. So furniture design, and at the time I was doing industrial design, so it was like the place to be. And every year we just look forward to this thing called Salone di Mobile, which is a furniture fair. You
Mm.
see every famous designer there. You get to see Naoto Fukasawa. What's the other guy called? You get to see all famous designers there every year. It's just a highlight. You get a lot of aesthetic influence from Europe. The good thing about being Milan is that you travel all over Europe and you get a sense of like the different styles in different European countries, and you actually subconsciously you're applying that into your work as well.
Mm. Which is
Yeah,
quite different, right? Like Nordic countries and South European are
very
very
different.
styles. Yeah.
The best thing about Milan and Italy, the food. Oh gosh, it's so good. Yeah,
Lately.
yeah,
Okay. So how about culture wise, right? Like, contrasting North America, Europe, Asia.
yeah, yeah.
What was
Interesting enough, having traveled globally and experienced different countries working, the biggest favor it's done me is that it all busts my what do you call that perceptions or what I heard of stereotyping, like hey, Italians love to they're very relaxed, and I cannot be more wrong. Like I realized working there, always the last guy to leave the office is the engineers, not because they're slow or whatever. Like they're just trying to be very innovative in the way they engineer those products. And I've actually I went away. It's like, man, I always thought Italians is just like, it's all about life and coffee and everything. They do have long lunch breaks, but they do stay in the office late at night, hammering out their work. And I've seen really hardworking people there, right? On the other hand, there's always this stereotypical view, like, Asians are very, very hardworking, that you work from day to night. I mean, somewhat quite true. Then I go to China for business, and lunchtime seeing people sleeping on their desk, I'm like, what's happening? So, but anyway, I also realized it is a way to for them to like have that an hour's rest, and then they jam the rest of the day, right? So in fact, every culture is hardworking in their own ways. That's one of my learning as well.
China
Yeah.
is 997. Like
Sorry?
China is 997.
Yeah, I heard about that. That's
Yes.
crazy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so okay, we have a few more questions.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have 10 more minutes. So I think some people wanted to ask you about like what do designers need to look for or take in consideration before moving to a new company in
Mhm.
another country.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think so let me reframe the question, is what do companies look for? Is that correct?
What does designers need to look for was
Or
the
what do
question.
designers need to look for?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, First of all, I think every designer is different. So the first question you need to ask yourself as a designer is like, what are my values? What
Mm,
what do I want to? In fact, my experience, and I really want to share with everyone, is it's actually really, really hard to answer what do you want. It's actually easier to answer what do I not want. And that's
mm,
why starting with consulting was a blessing, that you actually try so many that you realize the things that you don't want in order to inform what you want later on down in the year. Okay.
mhm,
Now, the other thing, so asking yourself, what are your values is an important question. The other thing is also a lot of things that you can ask, like, am I an explorer, or am I somebody who's very focused and want to be the best in something? And there are designers who just work in one industry and they become the best in that industry. They don't want diversity, right? So you really have to ask yourself a question: am I more the divergent type, or am I more the convergent type? So that
mhm.
will help you to really also find um, where you could or would want to belong as well.
Right.
Um, but to fast forward to today, I think designers this day have to, I mentioned earlier on, like empathy and all these things is just the fundamental basics. But these days, I find myself looking for people that can think more holistically in a way that, especially when we talk about UX in context of user experience. And I think I shared something in the last one of the sessions we had, is that the concept of product thinking, especially in this digital age, is very important for a UX designer, right? You're not there only to think about the interaction, the information the IAs, or the interaction flows and all these things, and how good the screen things look like. You actually really need to think like, if I you know um, create a self-service on a digital product, what are the implications? Do I actually have to lay off, uh, 300 people at a call center, an offshore call center that used to do that servicing, right? If I move this service and remove uh, from 10 steps into 5 steps, what are the implications in the background for my SAP systems? What are the implications for the processes that happens in an offline manner, that people need to actually have that particular data to do a certain thing? So this is what a UX designer these days need to think through much deeper layer beyond the screen, in order to inform what should be on the screen. So that's something that is important, that having some form of understanding of businesses, understanding of how companies operate is actually important for a designer as well. Yeah.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
let me open to the floor.
Yep.
Like there are other people who have more questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, our volunteers can also help lead some of these.
Oh,
Okay.
hi, Derek. I'm just gonna quickly jump in because somebody from the floor it's asking if you are still hiring for that remote position from your company.
Sorry, is it a question for me or for
For you.
Loretta?
For you.
For you, yeah. Are you
Oh,
still
yes.
hiring for that remote position?
Shameless advertising. Yes, we are. I'll just talk about product design for now. I have 3 roles that are open. The first one is I'm looking for a product design manager who can oversee 4 or 5 product designers or UX designers as well. This person will be responsible for the portfolio of our mobile and web ordering channels, working closely with the product managers that are managing these products. So that's the first role.
Wait, sorry. When you say product design, you don't mean industrial design,
No,
right?
no, 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 no. Mobile and web ordering channels. Yeah.
Okay. How
Which
many
is,
years of experience are you looking for this role?
I think, at least 6 to 10 for a manager.
Okay.
Yeah. Must have experience managing a team. And like what I mentioned earlier on, the product thinking part must be very strong. That understand what it means in the background when the team designs something. Yeah. What are the implications there? So that's the first role. The second role is a data products designer. What this means is that this person is very, very strong is in understanding how do you design a data product on to help the users take an action. And in fact, today I was having a conversation with my buddy who's a VP of a data product. It's not really about how good the product is and how fancy that visualization, how good it is. It's about how do people take action when they see the information on that data product, right? When you see statistics, it's not about the statistics, it's what the statistics is trying to tell you what you need to do as a user. And that's an offline implication as well, right? So that is the second role I'm looking for. It's probably an intermediate experience is good. Probably between 3 to 5 years of experience in data products would be amazing. The third one is a what's the third one? Okay, it's a person. So enterprise product designer. What I mean by enterprise product designer is somebody who actually designs what we call back of house tools. I mentioned earlier on, in order to operate a business, you actually need things like um, how do you create the offering to the client, to this consumer facing, and you need to have back of house systems to actually manage all these things. I manage pricing, I manage the product offerings, I manage the marketing. Like, you have all these things as a system. Like, we have all these tools that manage that. So this person must really love B2B products, SaaS products. Um, and actually, one of the things I really want to share is that I think as designers, we often love uh, designing consumer products, but I think more and more designers actually starting to love designing B2B SaaS products. And this is the kind of role I'm looking for, somebody who actually loves doing that. Yeah.
So I think the question was, are you hiring remote roles?
Yes.
Okay, yes. And
Mm-hmm.
okay, somebody asked, like, what is a data product? Can you explain that a little
Oh,
bit more?
so what's the question again?
What is a
Oh,
data?
what is a data product? So if you look at, I would recommend people to look into a couple of products. For Microsoft, it's Power BI, right? That's one. If you look into Google Looker, Looker. Those are data products. They actually create products that ingest data, and then they kind of display in ways that people can actually, make decisions based on the data.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe Jasmine, do you want to lead the other ones, the other questions?
Yeah. What advice do you have for those of us who are trying to break into UX in a new country?
In a new country?
Yeah.
So to move to a new country, that's interesting. I think if you there's two things, right? One, you can bring because the benefit of being from another country is to bring knowledge that the country that you're targeting to move to that they don't have. So that always sparks a conversation. Now, but then when you are aiming for the company in that particular country, you also want to be empathetic and understand the context of where they're operating from. And so whatever you share, like I have experience somewhere here. Now, how is it being applied in your country that is going to make your product or your service interesting that you may have never thought of, right? So um, it's the same case, right? When I mentioned early on, like even IDEO China shares stories to the rest of IDEO in the US and Europe. It's about how can they actually bring a new perspective to their clients. In the same way, if you're looking for a job in a new country, you need to have a perspective. You always want to challenge that company, not in a proud way, but say it kind of like you want to leave them thinking like, oh, I've never thought about that before. I should talk to you because you have a much more global view than I've done in the last 10 years sitting here in this country. Yeah. Hopefully that
And
helps. Yeah.
yeah, and do in-house roles or consulting roles or consultancy roles look for hard skills or soft skills
Both.
or both? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and are there any chances if I only have experience with boot camps?
Boot camps.
Yeah, boot camps.
I remember in some parts of Accenture and Fjord, there were people who got into those roles, having done some boot camps, but they usually start from like either an intern or a learning role. Let's put it this way, right? Yeah. But by
And
the way, I don't want to discourage. I do, there are people who actually did a switch and they after years they become like star UX designers or product designers as well. So yeah.
and when you mentioned you don't have enough people to do the work, how do you tackle that?
So you manage it instead of tracking it. You manage by saying no. So that's another skill a designer really have to get. The more experience you are, you really just have to say no to something, and you need to choose your where you focus on, right? So um, design can be everywhere, but when you're everywhere as a design team, you lose focus. So you need to really choose like what are the most strategic things that is going to move the needle in the business, and let's focus on that. So yeah, so tracking is also understanding um, where your impact can be felt and where it cannot be felt. And you want to go for the high impact type of work. Yeah.
I guess the question about boot camp is because we know a lot of people are trying to switch industries into
Yes.
UX. So
Yes.
all done is 3 months of UX boot camp at General Assembly or like Green Station or
Yeah.
So I think people are what they're trying to find out is do they have a chance of breaking into the industry if they only have that kind of training?
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%, if not 200. Um, the I would just share one more thing, which is like, I'm sorry, this is going a bit off track, but be thick-skinned, right? When you are trying to break in the industry and you are trying to switch a career by doing something, sometimes you may already realize deep inside you like, I might want to break into the healthcare industry or something like that. And you can use the bootcamp as a way to create your portfolio in there in order to have the conversation with the company that you want to join, right? So, and use it as what do you call it, a jumping board or like a platform, a starting platform to really create conversations that you can have with companies. Yeah. So
However, I realize a lot of companies,
yeah.
including you guys, like you guys are looking for people with at least what 3 years above experience.
Yeah.
Like, what about those who don't have that much experience, who are just coming in? What would you suggest to them?
There will always be companies that are going to look for, and it depends on the stage of the company. So at a certain point, when you get to a size, some companies get to a size where they say, you know what, oh, by the way, my team, we do have people that did like boot camps before, right? And that's how they got in. Yeah. So now they become senior, right? And now we're more focused on certain type of work. We need senior people, but it doesn't mean it's always going to be like that. At a certain point, there's going to be like when we need to scale, we also need people that are more, how do you say, bring new ideas in. And so we may have to hire people that came in from boot camps and all these things, right? So there will always be companies that hire from
How do people gauge their quality of work, I would say? Because I know a lot of people, because they're just switching, like either from engineering or
Yep.
marketing or advertising, and then they just did a boot camp, and maybe they just only have 2 projects in their portfolio, right?
Yeah.
How do you know how good they are? Like,
So my tip here, I think I shared it in one of my previous, and I think this is really worth sharing again, is not how good your product looks, it's really how we're looking for the way you think through the product. So I did mention and share last time that if I myself am looking at a portfolio, I don't look at how good it looks because that's very deceiving. I look at what are the most dirty and raw whiteboard sketches or post-it notes or things that you draw on a piece of paper. That shows me the confidence. That shows me the kind of thinking behind that product. Why are you thinking about this that way, right? So, and that's way before you even do your first wireframe. Well, it is a pen and paper wireframe. That shows thinking. Go for that. It's not about how nice that button or that screen animation looks like. Yeah, it is, but it's secondary. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Jasmine, any more questions?
Yeah, there's one more. How can we reach out to boot camps in real life for students? I think when you, if maybe
You want to clarify that question?
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, like a student, because it's kind of new to me. So should we consider it now or when we gain more experience in the industry? That's something that we should consider later in our, I don't know, a career.
Can I get your help, Elaine, on this? Because I'm not super familiar. I've never been through a boot camp.
Okay, I think there's a general
Yeah.
feeling that even after university, because I guess a few universities actually have UX curriculum, right? So I guess right now there's a trend of people, even after going through 4 years of university, they go to get to a boot camp. So I guess the question is, do you actually need a UX boot camp? Is that your question, Woody?
Yes. Yeah, I guess that's what I'm trying to ask.
I think it depends on what, if your university or school, you have you already learned the skill, right?
Yeah.
Can you maybe clarify the
Yeah,
reason
so
for this question? Yes.
yeah, so right now I'm doing the it's called interaction design in school. So it's a 4 years program. So I don't know what's the difference between school and boot camp in this case then.
I guess boot camp are really for the people who don't want to go through 4 years of school, and they want a shortcut, and it's pretty intensive in some of those boot camps, right? So I guess it depends on who you're learning from and how good it is. Yeah. Oh, Paul, do you want to?
Yeah. I think if if you're doing 4 years in interaction design, you don't need to go to a boot camp.
Okay,
Right?
I see.
Yeah. A boot camp is really like for people who want to quickly learn it in a very compressed manner, like the basics. So yeah, those are for or someone who's actually studied to be a doctor and realized actually I want to be a designer. Okay, you know what? Boot camps for you.
Okay, I
Or you
see.
go
That's
to school and
great.
do 4 years of interaction design, right? Like yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Paul, do you want to share your question?
Question. Well, wasn't really a question. It's just as someone who's you know been through a boot camp, I think it's good to have like similar skills because my background's more like in coding, and I also kind of learned some graphic design, just kind of on the job. And I felt a boot camp helped me just kind of translate some of those related skills into something else and kind of get like a intensive course. Whereas like, yeah, boot camps can work well for someone who's just coming in fresh, but it doesn't work for everyone. And I don't know if I'd recommend it for someone who's getting like a 4-year degree, and then also going into boot camp. But that's just my experience.
I actually want to commend Paul's comment. Is that a couple of things he said there is that actually it's good to have training work experience. Absolutely. In fact, one of the best learnings you can do outside of the fundamentals is really just get yourself any type of freelance job, even do it for free for friends who are trying to, you know, for example, a mom and pop store that wants to have a website, do it for them. Use it as a practice, right? Use it to build your portfolio and then use it as a stepping stone to have conversations with companies you're aiming to get into as well, right? The other comment that Peter made is, yes, there are a lot of boot camps out there. I personally know just a couple of them that are really good. GA and I forgot a couple of them. I forgot the name, but GA is one of the respectable one that you can definitely trust, right? And the rest, everybody's got to evaluate for themselves. Yeah.
And maybe Derek, can you explain the phenomena? Because I've realized that a lot of large companies or employers, they're not hiring people that are fresh grads that much, like 1 or 2 years out of school. Is that true in your experience?
I would say my perspective is limited to what I know. So I cannot represent everyone out there, but of course I do think some companies don't, some companies do. But I do remember in any of the companies that I've joined, there has always been people that came out fresh grad or just came out boot camp. So that phenomena is also true as well. So
okay.
yeah.
Any changes after, I mean, well, it's actually still during COVID, but any changes that has occurred with hiring, you know, during this time, you think?
I think for every company, in fact, one of the changes that I would say it's actually a positive change is that it actually increases the opportunity for people to get into UX. Why? Because if you look at every industry out there, they realize COVID-19 is a trigger and silver lining to actually increase digital transformation. And with digital transformation, actually it offers more need for UX designers to be part of it. So it is indeed, the opportunity is now. Yeah.
Great. Any more questions for you guys? I noticed that we were like maybe 13 minutes past 6 already. Like it was meant to be an hour, but a lot of people.
Good.
Great. And if no more questions, maybe Derek, you can type your contact here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Reach out to you if they're looking for a job.
Let me put in my LinkedIn profile, so feel free to add me in. Here we go.
And Danny, do you want to talk about the Slack?
Oh yeah, sure. First of all, thank you, Derek, for sharing the contact in the chat box. And then on the screen we have a QR code, and I would like to also put the link to our newly created Slack group. So so we've been trying to gather some feedbacks from the last event to ask everybody what are your preferred communication channels. So what we're working on right now is to create a hub for people to gather and sharing resources, also upcoming announcement. And so we think Slack could be a more official one for everybody to talk, because they have different channels there. We can even share job posting in it. If you want to keep in touch with us, scan the QR code or click the link on the checkbox to join our Slack group. And we also have a LinkedIn and Facebook page coming in. We're still working on that one. But I think once you join our Slack group, we will get everything sorted. That's.
Do you also have a survey that we want to send out?
Oh yes, we do have a survey because like I said, your feedback is very important to us. If you like the event today, or if you think that the format of the event can change a little bit, feel free to let us know by clicking the link on the right too. You will be leaded to a Google form. Fill in the form, and we will constantly reviewing it, constantly tweaking our format in IXDA. And yeah, so that's how we make the community better. Thank you.
Okay. So one last thing, one last announcement is what we're trying to do now is we're trying to build a mentor network and an advisor team for IxDA Vancouver. We have done this successfully in Hong Kong by inviting some senior practitioners in the industry, mentoring more junior designers or mid-level designers. We found that to be very beneficial, both sides. So if you have anyone that you think would be good, suggestions as mentors for us, for the community, please let us know, maybe via the survey as well. Yeah, so I think in the next few months, we will be able to put together that team, and we'll launch a mentorship program, okay, where you can maybe work for your mentors as well, an internship or mentorship, so they can actually make it easier for you to break into the industry. And last thing is, I've actually invited Loretta from Facebook to talk to us. I think she agreed to do it maybe in a month's time. So yeah, let us know if you have any suggestions for who can speak for us, or who we can connect with as well. Okay.
Yep.
That's it. Thank you so much, Derek, for sharing today. It was invaluable. I think people got a lot of insights into some of the well-known consultancies and corporates that they really want to work for.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Derek.
Should we get a group photo?
Oh yeah, let's get a big group photo together.
Oh, let's all turn on the camera.
Let's go wave.
So we can do the screenshot.
So everybody can see each other. Yeah, Summer, Paul, Eva, Joyce. Yeah, maybe turn your camera, Cherry, Paul. Okay. All right. Cheers.
All right.
Maybe we need a second page too. Second page.
We can take a quick video.
Yes, yes, yes.
Everybody waving.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all.
All right. Thanks for coming.
All right.
Check us out on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Eventbrite. We'll have a next event coming up.
Cool.
How would we find out more about the mentorship program? Well, it's in the planning right now, maybe in the next 2 months, I would say. But if you join the Slack group, you will be updated. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you next time.
Bye.